Hey, good evening, everybody. I am Rick Wilson, your host tonight on Resolute Square's The Strategy Session. I am joined tonight, of course, by Joe Trippi and Stuart Stevens, my friends and colleagues, and by the great Jill Lawrence, who writes brilliantly about the current moment we find ourselves in. And we are going to have a conversation tonight about trade policy with Bulgaria, whether or not we should be mining the deep seabed for men. Oh, wait, I'm sorry. We're going to talk about the assassination attempt against Donald Trump, the RNC convention, and everything else that's going on in this insane madhouse world of ours right now. And with that, let's get started. So I wanted to lead out, and I've talked about this a lot on both Resolute Square's Enemies List podcast and on the Lincoln Project podcast this week already. It is a moment of tremendous seriousness and a moment of great horror for the country to see an assassination attempt. But as each day has passed, I will say I find this more a story about a sad, broken, lost boy and less about a massive conspiracy engendered by divisive rhetoric. I want to get everybody's thoughts on this, but first I want to welcome you to the show, Jill. Thank you so very much for joining us tonight. And let me get your thoughts on where you think the politics of the attempted assassination stand at this point on Tuesday night, 72 hours in.
I would say that we have many more questions than answers. The polling seems to be pretty steady. The adulation for Donald Trump has ratcheted up. If a lot of people thought he was anointed by God before, and they did, many more do now. I think that there's going to be a lot of intentional turnout, because of this. But also, if you look at the history of assassination attempts, and people have done a lot of studies on this in just the last 2 days, they've talked about this. They don't tend to have an impact on whether you win or not. Right. So he was kind of headed on a good trajectory before, and this won't hurt it. It might help a little bit. I think the bottom line is the same. He doesn't appeal to the majority of Americans. Just a question of whether Democrats can get their act together. And I know all of you for a long time, and two of you in the Republican camp have just been, incredibly. I've wished for many years that Democrats could do what you guys do. Maybe
it has been fascinating to watch the Democratic Party do, I think, what Joe has lived through and Stuart and I have seen from the outside, of lock itself into a steel cage and say, who put us in the steel cage? So it is something that it has not surprised me they've had a bad reaction to this, but it also has disappointed me that it's now a sport where they're getting a little bit played, I think, in it. But Joe, tell me what your thoughts are on the moment here that we're in, because you've seen your party do this sort of shenanigan before.
Yeah, look, first of all, I don't think a whole lot changed after the debate even. I mean, the fact is Trump's been around 46. He's been at that number forever. Biden floats up and down, but usually somewhere in the same range. I understand the battleground states, have widened slightly, but it really didn't have it wasn't that big, oh my God, the sky's falling, the way everybody reacted to it. It was horrible. Don't get me wrong, but that's not my point. It didn't change. I don't think that the assassination attempt is going to change any of the numbers at all. I really don't. I don't think the convention's going to change much either. I mean, they may get a little convention bump. Everybody usually does.
Sure.
But it'll go back. I mean, the fact is, the way I look at it, 46. Trump's got the 46 that he got in 2016. He's got the 46.7 he got in 2020. When you look at, Jill just said it, over half the country, 53% of independents say that Donald Trump, and I'm going to say it, they say it, 53% of the American people say is a grave threat to democracy and should not return to the Oval Office. Well, last time I checked, 46 and 53 equals 99. And so what I actually think is going on is we got a 46-46 race where that last 9 points that are going to decide this all believe Donald Trump's a grave threat, and yes, believe that Joe Biden isn't all there, whatever they're too old, all that stuff. And we have to, if it's Joe Biden, we can win that fight. It's going to be tough, but we can win it.
Sure.
And if the party moves away from Biden, we can win that fight too. I just think we got to get to that fight, which is what I think is the worst thing that's happened since the debate. Is we as a instead of debating whether he should or shouldn't, all that stuff, we need to be attacking this convention, attacking what the lies, going after Trump, and let the things that we don't control, how the inside is going to fight with Biden or get him in, let it go. Just let them play it.
Yeah. Stuart?
Look, I look at the inner workings of the Democratic Party, and I feel like I'm trying to understand like Aztec human sacrifice. I just don't get it.
Right.
How's this supposed to work? We like sacrifice a virgin and then we get in touch with God. I don't know. You have somebody running for president. You are asking the question, is he up to being president? Well, he is president. You could have asked that in December 2020, I think, of anybody about to become president. How do you know? He has been probably the most successful first-term president since World War II. So obviously he's up to being president. Would he be up to be president in 4 years? I mean, that's like a theological question. I don't know who's going to be around to ask that question. And it, to me, it's a very simple race. I thought Friday night when they unveiled their 100-day agenda, right? That's a list of stuff that would test 80-20 to the good. You take Project 2025, that's going to test 20-80 to the bad. So for the life of me, I don't understand why you take 80-20 and run it against 20-80 and get about the business of just kicking this guy's ass.
Yeah.
Because it's not very difficult to do. He's only won one race in his life. The one guy who has beaten him is running against him. I just go out there and do it and quit talking about it.
Yeah, I think that's part of it is that I think there is a propensity right now among the media to say that every single event is the decisive event that will define the entire rest of the race. And I have a theory of the case. I'm going to get your feelings on this, Jill. I think in some ways, after all these years now, we're sort of numb with Trump. We sort of had it. We're sort of so burned out by the drama and the constant, trauma one after another, the constant explosions one after another, that we've lost track, I think, a little bit about how to follow a race, because everything now is declared as this means Trump is absolutely going to win. This means he's absolutely going to win. This means the race is over. And I think I look back to 2016 where all the things that were categorically going to blow Trump up never did. Or 2020, things that were going to blow Biden up never did. Talk to us a little bit about where you see that, because I think we've become a little numb to the realities of what the race really looks like at the fundamentals level, because we're following all of the sort of explosions and fireworks up above it.
I see it a little bit as more of an arc. The debate performance was so catastrophic, and it wasn't like a new catastrophe. It was kind of the confirmation of all the old thoughts that people were having. And so now, I wrote about this a little bit at the Bulwark the other day. There's a brand disconnect. The campaign is doing everything that a person would hope to be done. It's quick, it's snarky, it's smart, but that's all on social media. And then you see the candidate, and the arc that I see is I listen to him. I don't think there's ever been a president that so reflected my values in my lifetime. I mean, I just,
Right.
brain is starting right from there and going on through bipartisanship, just all kinds of things. But he's not making the argument, and I don't know if he can. And in a way, Democrats have been kind of spoiled because they hear Gavin Newsom, they hear Kamala Harris talking about abortion, they hear Josh Shapiro, they hear Gretchen Whitmer. They've got a lot of really deeply talented bench people. And that's what you want, people who can make the argument. I mean, there's so many arguments to make. There's the democracy argument overall. There's the Project 2025 and all the unpopular things that they want to do. There's the control of women's bodies and the health risks that I don't think not too many foresaw. So I'll shut up in a minute here, but you see what I'm saying. I think I'm not saying it can't be won with Biden. I think it can, but it's not optimal.
No, but I think that, look, I think there was you're absolutely right. It was a horrendous and confirming moment at the debate, and it wasn't a one-time thing. That's what I'm saying. I'm not believing that, and I do think it was healthy and has been healthy for the American people to see a party to actually debate and discuss, like, what's going on with our guy, and what, which is not happening at all on the other side with Trump. I mean, convicted of 34,000, and it's still okay no matter what. And so, but I do think we're kind of in this weird purgatory where the more voices, if Joe Biden is the nominee, he got the 14 million votes. He has every right to say, I'm still in this thing, regardless of what George Clooney or Joe Trippi or anybody else thinks. Right. And if that's going to be the case, our best chance, either way, whatever's going to happen, it cannot continue for weeks here. We've got to, by the end of next week or as soon as this convention's over, there's got to be some finality to this. Either everybody gets behind Biden and puts their oar in the water to defend democracy and win with him, or he makes that the other decision. Either way, I think we can win. But sort of pick your path. But we need to go. All of us need to get on the path. Because, by the way, the reason I agree with you, Jill, about all these voices that could be out there making these arguments, but instead, the only argument is whether Stan Greenberg's memo. Literally, we have in the middle of the Republican convention, Democratic folks on the sets being asked about Stan Greenberg's memo. And I respect Stan Greenberg. That's not what I'm saying here. But that's stopping us from having that debate, the one we need to have, to actually put it on Trump.
Well, Stuart and I were out in touring last week out in the fundraising circuit we were on last week. And we saw this over and over again, these very well-meaning, donors and activists who were like, well, obviously he just has to leave now and it'll all be fine. And I think that's been a failure of the party to explain to people, like, this is a complicated endeavor. If you want to get rid of Joe Biden, it's complicated. There's a process, and I think that was a failure they had for about a week. And I think then people sort of organically realized, like, oh, wait, this doesn't just happen like overnight. You don't automatically just replace him and it's all fine and good. And I think that the thing I really regret about I mean this just in the coldest political calculus, the thing I regret about the assassination attempt on Trump, aside from the assassination attempt, is that there was a real dialogue building up in the country about Project 2025. It is, as we all know, a stinker. As I found out from sources around Trump world, they tested the hell out of it, and that is why they pulled the alarm bell with Trump and said, you've got to denounce this thing, you've got to get away from it. It is radioactive poison for them. And so, this is like the Democrats were handed a weapon against Trump and this campaign, and I feel like they've left it on the table. I mean, I feel like, Stuart, we've talked about this a lot, and I feel like this is one of the most powerful arguments they have, and they're just not making it. We're making it. In fact, actually, let's show the ad we just put up today about Project 2025. It's tongue in cheek, folks, but it makes a point. Let's roll that, and then we'll talk about it. Maybe not. Could happen.
Welcome to the Trump 2024 convention, brought to you by Project 2025. This week in the horrible city of Milwaukee, Wisconsin, you'll see the best of the Trump Project 2025 party. It's a bold vision for a bright future. With Trump Project 2025, you'll love how new tariffs will make everything more expensive and set off runaway inflation. We know you'll appreciate paying for the big tax cut our struggling billionaires need. When you seniors are done freeloading, check out Project 2025's plan to end Medicare, Medicaid, and Social Security. So get out of that nursing home bed and get back to work. And ladies, this convention has so much in store for you. With Project 2025, you'll learn how good you'll have it in the kitchen. Girls, if your marriage isn't working out, you'll need Project 2025's helpful tips to keep the romance alive, even if he's abusive, because we're getting rid of divorce. And if Mr. Wrong gets you pregnant, welcome to motherhood, because we've ended Roe v. Wade and we're going to criminalize birth control. And minorities, well, you didn't need those silly voting rights anyway. For you Jews, Muslims, Mormons, and other fake religions, you'll get a head start on learning America is a Christian nation. Project 2025 is Donald Trump's plan for your future, and it couldn't be any brighter.
Project 2025 Bright Future Guarantee applies to white evangelical Christian men only. Other conditions may apply. Offer not valid in a functioning republic.
I mean, funny but not funny. Stuart, let me start with you. Let's talk a little bit about Project 2025's impact on the race and what people should be doing with it.
Look, at this point in 1988, very few people knew who Willie Horton was, not to rub a sore spot. And Bush was about 17 points behind. That changed. I think that people are always willing to believe that bad things will happen to them more than they're willing to believe that politicians will do good things for them. And if you just take the abortion issue, the way that we in the Lincoln Project have talked about it is complementary to how a lot of pro-choice groups and Democratic groups talk about it. They tend to talk about abortion rights. We tend to talk about losing freedom. What the idea that this is what you thought for 2 generations was a constitutional right that has now been taken away from you. And what I think is people have sort of not grasped that all those ads that we made against Obamacare was premised upon the notion that you don't want the government to come between you and a doctor. And that resonated with a lot of conservatives. So what in the world is a post-Dobbs world like, except the government has come between you and your doctor? And it's not shocking that in the Lincoln Project, we found a lot of voters out there in key states who resonate with that argument. That argument resonates with them. So I think they ought to get about, they should always refer to it as Donald Trump's Project 2025. Trump trying to distance himself from it is I didn't inhale of policy. It's disingenuous and makes him seem, I think, very weak. And you've got J.D. Vance, weird little guy who, we're going to learn a lot more about, who has said that women should stay in violent marriages, who has said that women who are raped shouldn't have abortions, even if it was inconvenient. So, I just think this is way out of the American mainstream.
Jill? I
think there's still time. I think people like me haven't even written about it yet, but we will. And, there are lots of ways to write about it and lots of ways to make it hit home. I do think that ad was great. And I hope, all of you former Republicans or, distanced Republicans can bring your miracles, work your miracles on these very hard hitting ads, because Democrats just shy from the jugular. I just don't know what
it's that's why I joined the Lincoln Project. Jill, because I've been out there all this time. And I throw punches, but you can't, there just aren't that many. There's something, I don't know, it's in the DNA of the party or something. But these guys know how to punch, and you got to punch this guy. You have to.
Yeah. Well, the thing about abortion, that resonates is that it's so personal and it's so emotional. And so although it's a policy issue, it doesn't kind of get lost in the policy weeds that Democrats usually get lost in.
Yeah, exactly.
And so, and frankly, Kamala Harris does a very good job of making that argument hit home. So, there is that.
Yeah, I think that's true. Is that, I mean, we have that pre-existing momentum about Dobbs in the country. It had altered the political climate starting in 22. It is done nothing but accelerate since 22 among women voters, particularly a lot of the voters that have to be swayed in this election, more moderate Republicans, more educated, affluent, suburban Republican types, our Bannon line voters, we call them. But having it codified so sharply in Project 2025, I think, really is a great gift on the part of the Republican Party for people like us and for the Biden campaign to get out there and say, hey, just so you all know, we're not making this up. This is what they're saying in their own words. And I have trouble believing that Gen Z is going to jump on board with the party that wants to ban abortion, contraception, and pornography. I have trouble believing that's going to work out for them as well as they think.
And this is where J.D. Vance is a big help too, because of all the stuff he's written and said about they can say, Project 2025, we don't know anything about it. Well, you just pick J.D. Vance, and he believes every freaking thing that's in there that you talk about.
He's a fanboy of the entire effort by the Heritage Foundation.
So. There was that Tim Alberta, great reporter, article, Jill, I'm sure you saw it, about profile, sort of a curtain raiser on the Trump campaign. And they were in there. It's very interesting. You had La Savita and Susie Wild predicting landslide victories. Now, there's kind of two ways to look at that. I think personally they are basically taking the role of Trump's doctor when he said he'd be the most fit president ever. Because this is how you must raise in Trump world. We're not just going to win. We're going to win huge. It's going to be great. People are going to, we're going to win 57 of those things. We're going to even let them, we'll count Puerto Rico and we'll win there. And
DC.
And DC. Going to carry these, no question, no 100%. But when you look at who they pick J.D. Vance, who is a base pick. You do not pick J.D. Vance if you think that you still having trouble with your base. It is not someone who is going to expand your vote share. And I think this point that Joe made, that he's never broken 47%. Romney lost with 47.2%.
Yep.
And I don't know what he is doing to get new customers. What is the deal that the party is trying to strike with voters? You vote for us and you get what?
Revenge.
It sounds like he's taking advice from his son, who loves J.D. Vance. And, I'm not sure there's logic behind it. I think there's emotion behind it.
I think that's a very good point. Yeah.
Well, Elon Musk, $45 million a month might have had a small.
Yeah, that was, I think, a big factor there, because he's the fan of the tech bros. I'm surprised Musk isn't speaking at the convention. Honestly, I really thought that might be their a surprise play, but he's not. Although I will say, speaking of Musk and his hangers on. The David Sachs speech last night went over like a wet fart in a hot car. I mean, that guy went out to give the Putin cheering section speech, and people booed him, even in Trump's Republican Party. I thought that was a really interesting moment. And Stuart, you and I were talking about that a little earlier today. It's like there are still vulnerabilities in the party that Trump has not figured out. That he may command the party with an iron fist, but there's still a lot of believers out there in the America of a more Ronald Reagan-looking Republican Party.
Yeah, Joe, one of the things that I just baffles me is, isn't it fair to say that most presidential candidates are optimistic? They talk about, here we're in the greatest country in the world. Have we ever had a nominee of a party that said we're a third world country? That you're an uncivilized country. I mean, I go back. You say that stuff, and where I grew up in a bar, and somebody asked you to step outside. I mean, is this really how people want to see America? I just
Well,
I don't get it.
he was that was the campaign he ran in 2015 to 2016. I mean, he wrote a book, and it had a terrible name, and it had a picture of him glowering on the cover. I mean, it was I can't I wrote about it, and by the time, like a month later, they had changed the picture on the book to be
Huh.
smiling, because I mean, but if you
Yeah.
in my piece, which was for US News, you could
Right.
see, if you go to the original link, you can see the original cover. And it was really strange, because there have been a million studies about this, that the optimistic candidate almost always wins.
Right.
And
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 the
he's
the networks are all now using really smiley pictures of him. It's really interesting because that's not something they've been doing. But suddenly, after the assassination attempt, every picture is a smiling
Right.
guy. It's
And,
amazing.
and look, I think there are a lot of network folks that have already sort of decided Trump's going to win,
Yeah.
and they're playing the game ahead of time. I mean, this afternoon, Katie Tur has Eric Trump on her show on MSNBC, and people lost their minds. People were not happy, and to the point where the guy got away with saying, "Oh, I have a children's charity," and she didn't say the words, "the one you stole from and are forbidden from having in New York again," right? But I think there are a lot of reporters, a lot of our friends at the Times, who have already sort of decided, well, I better get while the getting's good. I better treat this normally because I don't want to be cut out. It's sad,
Can I
but
But
defend my profession for a minute here? I don't
sure.
think that's
I
true.
know.
I
I'm not
mean,
dissing you, Jill.
well, no, I'm not talking. I'm talking about. I mean, reporters. It's the Republican convention. They're talking to Republicans. They're talking to the son of the person who was a president and might be another one. I mean, I think you're going to see a lot of that when the Democrats have their convention too. But Democrats have to get in a more positive frame of mind, and
I, I,
just advance their cause.
I want to ask
I
Jill
mean,
a question. Let me ask Jill a question. And I ask this as a question, not an argument, right? Is your role as a journalist different in a world in which you know that the other party has attempted to end the transference of power? They did end the peaceful transference of power. That you have someone who has said he will be a dictator. You have someone who has attacked every instrument of civil society in America, from the police to the courts. Do you treat that like Joe Clinton, Romney, Obama? Or should you look and say, look, there's something evil here, and it's our job to explicate that evilness?
I think it is a very difficult job. I've said and I've written. I really don't know what. I mean, I was in the opinion world. I was an opinion editor
Sure.
for the entire Trump campaign, and I don't know what I would have done. I mean, I don't think some of the headlines that I've seen, that I look at, I think on straight news stories, they really could be better. They really could convey a lot more of what stories actually say about what Trump has in mind. I do think you have to remember, and come to me like in a month, but we're a day or two, we're within 48 hours, 72 hours of the man being almost killed. And they have his son on TV. It's the middle of the convention. Um, I don't know what you can do if you're trying to just tell the story of what's happening.
Yeah, I grant you that. I'll grant you that. Yeah.
no, and that's where Democrats can play into this the wrong way. So if we keep this up, there'll be reporters on the floor of our convention asking delegates, "Do you think he's too old to be president? Do you think is there?" I mean, so we create that whole. I mean, then you're reporting what's really happening on the floor. I mean, this is what I'm saying about we have
No,
to.
you're right. It's got to end. It's
Yeah.
got to be resolved.
Yeah, I'm
There,
not arguing
yeah.
about who, what. I just think, like, damn it, somebody please put
But
an end to this.
unity
Get
is a
our oil mark.
Republican superpower.
Yeah.
Unity is a Republican superpower that I think is underestimated by Democrats. Is Donald Trump could be convicted of murder, and they would still be on that floor saying he is the greatest president of all time and he will reign for 1,000 years. It just that it's fake, it's weird, but it's a real effect that occurs inside the Republican ecosystem. Stuart and I've seen it when it works.
We benefited from it. God help us. Two numbers I was looking at really blew my mind, right? So in 2016, Access Hollywood, all these Republicans ran away, right? You had people say, well, I'm going to vote for Mike Pence, not Donald Trump. I'm not sure how that works. Like, they have a ballot like that. It's separate. I don't know. But at the end of the day, Trump got 92% of Republicans.
Right.
Barack Obama in 2012 got 89% of Democrats. So a higher percentage of Republicans post Access Hollywood will still go with their guy than Barack Obama in 2012, who had 50% favorables, as did Mitt Romney on election day.
Right.
I mean, it's like, what, why?
Well, I'm convinced, this campaign seems like it's been going on for about 10 years now, and it's going to go on for about another 10 years because we move in a different time space than I think we used to move in politics.
Well, look, I want to put a plug in that for people to read Jill's stuff because we don't like no. I am retweeting her a ton because I think she's right. And there's all kinds of times, too, by the way, where I think she's wrong, but she really makes me think about what I've been thinking. And so, like, if you're looking for just a straight take, and one you may even disagree with from time to time, but isn't out there to please you, but telling you like it is, Jill, and that's why I'm really glad you're on with us tonight.
I could not agree. I will say, Jill, what I think is one of the great compliments as a writer. When I open up a piece of yours, I'm not sure what you're going to say. And that is very rare.
Yeah.
It is, I think, a sign of someone who is an active intelligence looking at this world, raising questions, because it's not simple. And we're lucky.
I mean, this is the most complicated period I could remember.
Mm-hmm.
You guys, what do you think?
Look, we've all got enough mileage here to go back a minute, and aside from 1968, when I was 5, I don't think I can think of a more complex political landscape, and the landscape in 68 was not even this bad in a lot of ways. It's a very challenging environment in every respect. So I don't know where it's going to end, but it's gonna be loud all the way down. So,
speaking of 68, only the Democrats would say we're going back to Chicago. Let's have another open convention.
Right? What a genius idea!
Man, that would be great.
Very smart. That's my party.
Can't be open. Biden has to be in charge. He has to be running the show, whether he's turning it over or taking it on.
Exactly. I agree with Jill 100% on that. He has
what
to be in charge. It's his show. He's turning. Yeah.
Well, guys, I appreciate it very much, Jill. The great conversation tonight, Joe and Stu, as always. And thank you, folks, for watching. And just a note to everybody: we are all slaves to the algorithm. We must feed the algorithmic beast. Do like and subscribe on YouTube and other platforms. Share the content. Go to resolutesquare.com. You can find a number of brilliant authors every day who are thinking about the tough problems in our culture, our politics, our society. And we look forward to seeing you again on next Tuesday. And we'll, on that day, wrap up the madness that will have been the Republican National Convention. Thanks, everybody. Have a great day.
Follow Joe Trippi's Trippi Show.
Oh, yeah, Joe Trippi's Trippi Show. Enemies List. Lincoln Project. And the breakdown is back, baby. Maya May has rejoined the cast, and we had one of our biggest nights ever last night on our special Monday last-minute broadcast. So grateful for everybody to tune on that and here on Resolute. See you next week, everybody.
Thanks,
Jill.
Guys.
Thanks.
Thank
Take
you.
Care.
You too.